this is the 8th and final video for simplifying expressions. We'll go over this last set of practice problems, and then you will have a set of problems to do on your own where the answer key is in the back of the packet. So here we are finding the GCF, your greatest common factor, and then writing each expression as a product, which means multiplication. So we have to factor our 2x plus 10. Now 2 is prime, so we're not going to factor 2. 10 is not. That is the same as 2 times 5, and each of those are prime. I'm going to change that color real quick to red. So we have our first term as 2 times x, and then our second term is 2 times 5. And these are being added, so I'm going to put plus in between. I'm going to circle what they have in common. They each have a 2 in common. So first, I'm going to say, hey, my GCF is 2. So let's put 2 out in front because that's what I'm taking out of each expression. And what's remaining is an x plus 5. That is our product. That is our factored form. Next, 5 is prime, so I'm not going to factor 5. 20 is not. 20 is the same as 4 times 5, where 5 is prime. 4 can be factored further into 2 times 2. So, all of it changed. Let's go back to 5. There we go. Now remember to change colors for you guys. So we have a 5 times x for our first term, and then we are subtracting 2 times 2 times 5. So what do these have in common? Well, they each have a 5. So first, let's say, hey, our GCF is 5, and then we need to factor that out. So take out the 5 and fill in what's remaining. The first term has an x, while the second term has a 2 times 2, which is 4, and it is negative. So there is your product, 5 times x minus 4. So let's continue. Next, we have a 4. 4 can be factored by 2 times 2. And then we have a 16. Well, I know 16 is the same as 4 times 4. And then each of these can be factored into 2 times 2, where all these 2's are now prime. So remember, we need to write the factored form of 4x squared. So I have 2 times 2, and I'm going to break up that x squared, which is x times x. We are subtracting, and this is 4 2's. So I'm going to write 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and there is an x at the end of that term. So let's identify what the greatest common factor is. I see they have a 2 in common, oh, another 2 in common, and an x in common. So 2 times 2 times x is actually 4x. The GCF is equal to 4x. Then we can factor out that 4x. That's what we're taking out. Write that out in front of the parentheses and fill in what's remaining. The first term has an x remaining, while the second term has a 2 times 2 remaining, which is 4. So, since this is a subtraction, let's fill in our minus, and there is our product. If you want to double check your solution or your factored form, we have 4x times x is 4x squared, and 4x times negative 4 is a negative 16x. That should always match your original. Next, we are factoring 30x plus 45. Numbers are going to get a little bit bigger, but your process does not change. 30 is the same as 5 times 6, and 5 is prime while 6 is not. We can factor 6 by 2 and 3. Next, we are factoring 45. I know that is the same as 5 times 9. 5 is prime, 9 is not. So we can break that up between 3 and 3. If you chose different factors, you should still get the same prime factorization in the end. So factoring 30x, I have 2 times 3 times 5. when you're getting multiple numbers and different numbers, you always want to write them from smallest to greatest. That way you can identify your common factors easier. The next, don't forget, we also have an x here. The next term is 3 times 3 times 5. So I'm going to put the 3's first and my 5, and there's no variables there. And since these are being added, I'm going to put a plus in between. I'm going to change those to red so they match the rest of our problems. What do they have in common? I don't see any 2's, but I do see a single 3, and I see a 5 in common. So 3 times 5 is the GCF. 3 times 5 is 15. So the GCF is 15. That's what we're factoring out. What's remaining is a 2x. In the first term, and the second term has a positive 3. So that means 15 times 2x should be 30x, which it is. 15 times 3 should be 45, which is also true. So there is our final product. We have 2 more. Let's take a look. We are factoring 18xy. So 18 can be factored between 2 and 9, where 2 is prime, and we need to factor 9 further, which is the same as 3 times 3. So let's write out our prime factorization. This is 2 times 3 times 3. Don't forget this is x times y, so I'm going to separate those as well. We can factor 12, which is the same as 3 times 4. 3 is prime, 4 is not. Let's break that up between 2 and 2. So this is being subtracted, so it's a minus 2 times 3, and don't forget the x. So what do these have in common? I see a 2 in common, I see a 3 in common, and I see an x in common. So 2 times 3 times x is 6x. The GCF is 6x. That's what we're going to factor out of each of these terms, is a 6x. What's remaining in the first term is a 3y, and in the second term is just a 2. The sign in between is negative, so it's minus. That would be your product. One more. 35 is the same as 5 times 7. So both of those are prime. And then 21 is the same as 3 times 7, where both of those are prime. So the prime factorization of 35x squared is 5 times 7 times x times x. And then 21 is 3 times 7. Notice there's no x there, so it's just 3 times 7. Don't forget these are being subtracted, so it's a minus in between. The common factors I see, the common factor actually is just a 7. I don't see anything else that these have in common. So the GCF is just 7 for this example. So let's factor out a 7, put that out in front, and remaining is a 5x times x. So that's actually 5x squared. The second term, all that's left is a 3, and it is negative. So there is your product. Double check it. 7 times 5x squared is 35x squared, and 7 times negative 3 will give you negative 21. So now you are on the home stretch. These are your last examples to practice, where the factored forms are written in your answer key in the back of your packet. When you complete these, you should be ready to retake the test on simplifying expressions once you can match all of these answers in your packet. Good luck when you're done, and I hope you do well on your test.